Pollution is no longer an accident. It's a system, an outcome of our choices. Hello and welcome. I'm Sadhika Tiwari and you're watching Eco India. We're coming to you from Delhi, a city known for its history, its culture, its energy and its resilience, but also for the pollution that touches almost everything here. The air, the rivers, the soil and even the water that we drink. And yet, this city persists. So today we ask a simple but urgent question. Is there a fix to all this pollution? One answer could lie in protecting our natural systems, like forests. They are a front line against pollution, protecting our soil, our environment, our air and our water. But this shield is thinning really quickly. India has lost nearly 2.3 million hectares of tree cover between 2000 and 2024. And this is just one sign that speaks to the scale of degradation of natural forests. But once lost, can these forests be truly rebuilt to their original glory? And can such efforts actually move the needle?
This is a privately owned stretch of land on the edge of Rajaji National Park in Uttarakhand. It's not a protected forest, not a plantation, not a tourism project either. It's an attempt to bring biodiversity back to a land that had been stripped of it. But private ownership here does not imply private access. It implies private responsibility, which is born here by activist and entrepreneur Jay Dhar Gupta.
If I just protect the land, nature will do most of the work, right? Nature will do the rest, and that's the beauty of rewilding. And that's what I did. I bought the land.
For years, Jay lived and worked in New Delhi, one of the world's most polluted cities. The pollution entered his system and affected his health.
I had no respiratory problem all my life. I was a national swimmer. I acquired this problem in 2013, first time, and it was a huge hit. But I think my level of consciousness completely changed once I got sick, thanks to a degradation in our nature and environment.
Jay became one of the most visible voices around Delhi's air pollution, working through public campaigns and fighting for clean air in the courts of India.
Even now, I don't think most people understand what air pollution is, and I don't think most people understand that we are creating the air pollution. This is not a natural phenomenon, and most people don't understand what actions we need to curb to reduce our emissions. I mean, there's still a huge knowledge gap.
So Jay decided to build his own little biosphere. Until a few years ago, this land he now owns looked very different. It was a plantation with, among other trees, water-sucking eucalyptus on the terrain.
We actually started work on the land in 2022, and first there was the process of kind of removing the monoculture eucalyptus plantation. That took us about a month. And then we actively, and the previous owners had flattened a land, right? Because the only value in India of agricultural land, so to speak, or revenue land is if it's flat. So it took us a year to even just create the natural contours and the magic, the mystery that you would expect to experience on a wild land.
Vijay Dhasmana is an ecologist that guides Jay.
Actually, this morning we have kind of just spent.
He says he's not designing a forest, but understanding what this land once supported and what it can once again support.
Only number I know what it is.
The principles of rewilding or ecological restorations are: first, identify a reference site, which would be your site which is intact, which is ecologically functional, has integrity, and then you identify the threats to your present site which is degraded. What were the factors that were leading to the degradation? And then you try to plug them. Those are the principles. And also bring in the flora as much you can into a landscape.
The fact that this piece of land borders a protected forest helps invite various species of flora and fauna in. These are monitored, tracking and tagging how trees grow, respond, and change over time. Across the biosphere, camera traps record who returns and when, while marked plots on the ground track how the forest grows season by season. This land is funded by Jay's Delhi-based company whose profit helps him sustain the land. At a time when conservation in India is largely confined to state-controlled forests, this experiment raises a larger question. How can citizens contribute in a country facing widespread ecological degradation? Jay is currently planning a second such biosphere in the south of the country, where neighboring landowners suggest interest in rewilding land collectively, a model that could perhaps be more replicable.
I think this biosphere or this project is, it can have an educational value, it can have a role model value, but in terms of scale, how it is going to be impacting overall, I think Uttarakhand is blessed with wildlife, with forest. What we need to do is to protect them.
At 32 acres, this biosphere is small. It cannot replace protected areas or state-led conservation, but it gives people like Jay, whose bodies have been affected by pollution, a place to breathe, and an opportunity to offer such a solution to many others around the region. Protecting forests for health reasons is critical in India, and such models contribute to the larger effort.
The lack of thick green forests also contributes to air pollution among other factors. The right to breathe clean air is a fundamental right according to India's constitution, and yet, from children to adults, from shrinking lungs to rising deaths, air pollution has the potential to slowly kill us all. In Delhi, it's a huge problem, especially for Delhiites. There have been protests and failed efforts by the government to get things under control. But the problem persists. And most of us assume that it's a city problem, a problem that is just confined to urban areas. But is that actually the case? Scientists might have some answers.
It is high precision work. When Suman Kumar is out with his surveillance van, he is meticulous. Nothing can be allowed to slip through his fingers. But Suman Kumar is no secret agent. He's a PhD student at the Indian Institute of Technology in Kanpur, Uttar Pradesh. And he's not hunting ordinary criminals. His target, sources of harmful air pollution. Fine particulate matter measuring 2.5 microns or less.
With sensors, we can monitor PM 2.5 and some gases. But with this mobile van, what instrument we have in this, we can monitor the composition of PM 2.5. With that composition, we do source apportionment and we identify sources around that where we have deployed the van.
More than 2 million people in India die every year as a result of air pollution. Fine particle pollution is notoriously high in industrial areas and big cities. What's new, however, is the realization that rural areas have long been affected too. Chaubepur is a village not far from Kanpur. Residents say the air here is especially bad in the mornings. It gets even worse in winter, when people light fires to keep warm. It is very difficult to breathe, especially in the mornings. It doesn't feel like we're breathing the same air as we used to have here years ago. You feel massive congestion in your chest, a lump in your throat like phlegm. It's worse when you do physical labor. It's a problem that urgently needs to be tackled. Collecting data on the pollutants in the air is a first step. We've come to the Indian Institute of Technology in Kanpur. Here, Professor Sachidanand Tripathi heads up the team with the surveillance van. While not enough to capture the full extent of the air pollution, The van is an important part of a broader monitoring network that the researchers have developed.
Air pollution is a major problem globally, and certainly it is also in India. So monitoring air pollution is one important step towards managing it. Back in 2016, we started working on something what is called as sensors, which is a very cost-effective way to scale up the monitoring footprint.
The team has already put in a lot of work. Over the past few years, the researchers have installed around 1,400 sensors across the states of Bihar and Uttar Pradesh, both in cities and rural areas. All the data flows back to the institute. The readings from the sensors, the measurements collected by the van, and additional meteorological information such as wind speeds. Artificial intelligence helps the researchers collate and analyze the data. The results can then be sent from the institute straight to the local authorities.
We want that these kind of decision support system run, and we help these civic governments to design their interventions, be able to understand which pocket of these cities have a problem, a recurring problem, which requires some kind of, let's say, a long-term policy interventions.
Local authorities have long been aware that action is needed. More and more people are suffering health problems caused by air pollution. All population groups are affected, according to Anirudh Nigam from the IIT Kanpur Health Center. He sees the same ailments again and again.
There is asthma, there is pneumonia, there is cancers are being diagnosed in rural part of India, and when they have been brought to the urban centers, we diagnose it is because of the pollution and air pollution.
The urgency of the problem has spurred on the scientists. Here on the Institute's test field, they're preparing the next 45 sensors for deployment. All of them have to be precisely calibrated to avoid potential measurement errors. Once deployed, they will measure not just air pollution levels, but also the humidity and temperature of the ambient air and other data in real time. There's a small hole in the sensor housing that allows the air to pass through. It sucks the air in. Then whatever the pollution is, you can see it in the display screen. We study the readings to find out where and how high the pollution levels are. There are some places with very high values, some with lower values, so we get a range of readings. That's why we install them across the entire district. The goal is to expand the monitoring system across large territories. It's only possible because the sensors that the scientists are deploying are a very low-cost but effective monitoring technology. Thanks to rapid AI-based analysis, their data provides important decision-making tools for the authorities, who now need to take action. Initial ideas already exist. The scientists' project has just been extended for another 3 years. So the van will continue to cover many kilometers, tracking down and exposing sources of fine particulate pollution in the states of Bihar and Uttar Pradesh.
From the villages of North India to the streets of Berlin, the question remains the same. How do we live without leaving traces of toxicity behind, like this jar of plastic? Laws are supposed to draw clear lines between what is allowed and what isn't. But when it comes to plastic, these lines are getting harder to see. Even in cities that take pride in their regulations and seem to have it all sorted out. My colleague Katharina is setting out on the ground to find out what a plastic ban in Berlin actually looks like.
Since 2021, throwaway plastic like this has been banned in the EU. In Germany, the ban has a very German name: Einweg-Kunststoffverbotsverordnung. But I still feel like I see it everywhere here in Berlin. Let's set the timer to 1 hour and collect as many single-use items as I can. Clock's ticking, let's go. Plastic straw for my mango fruit drink. plastic cups for your various beverages. I've never been so excited about a plastic cup in my life. Oh, that's 1 hour. It's safe to say that I was pretty successful. So I just counted a little more than 20 items that I collected in 1 hour, so I found one plastic item every 3 minutes. That's insane. To me, this all looks like it would have been banned a while ago. So that would mean the ban isn't working. Am I right? To find out, I carried my plastic haul across Berlin to meet up with someone who knows the rules inside out. Okay, you ready?
Ready?
Your first reaction to all this plastic.
That's really a lot of plastic, and at first glance, it looks to me like much of it should no longer be allowed.
Britta Schartz has spent a decade helping consumers eat sustainably and cut down on plastic. To find out the extent of the problem, we sorted everything into 3 piles. This is banned, that's unclear, and that's still allowed. I'm smiling here, but I didn't get it. It's all single-use plastic, no?
They started with the worst first. What could we first do away with that's really superfluous?
The EU investigated what kind of trash is out there and found that roughly 40% of litter is single-use plastic. So they figured banning that would fix most of the problem. But clearly it hasn't worked so well.
I think it's a bit naive of the EU to say, well, that's no longer allowed in there, so it won't land up there. Just take a look, everyone's doing it.
She says sellers illegally import these items from outside the EU.
If there's a law, it needs to be enforced, otherwise no one will abide by it.
In theory, the law is enforced through fines. The local kebab shop could be fined up to 100,000 euros for giving you a plastic fork. Sounds steep, but it's like speeding. If no one fined you for breaking the speed limit, no one would stick to it. So, are these fines ever actually enforced? I contacted the 5 biggest German cities to ask if they had fined anyone. Most said they only get active if they hear of any violations, or they carry out random checks, if at all. But not a single one could point to any example of fines. So, what about the unclear stuff in this other pile? Didn't the EU ban plastic cutlery?
These forks look the same. They're both made of plastic, but here you can see the manufacturer's trick. It says reusable.
Well, technically, you can hardly see it. But this tiny word and the fact that the fork is a little thicker means it can stay in circulation. In other words, a loophole. Or a deliberate circumvention of the law, Britta said. Because there's another problem.
Reusable does not mean reused.
Natalie Gontard is a leading researcher on plastic pollution and has won several awards for her work. She says these reusable items can even do more harm than good since the way we use them hasn't changed at all. I mean, if you got this fork at your local kebab shop, would you use it more than once?
In some area, we have been able to increase the consumption of plastic by banning single-use plastic, because the law can be easily circumvented by just increasing the thickness.
And she has proof that a lot of companies are doing just that.
Many companies have contacted me when these bans were in preparation. They were a little bit panicked and at the end they come back to me, very sorry, really. We don't need your help anymore because it's very simple. We will just increase the thickness. And at the end they are working as usual. Where is the progress here? Where is the interest? Where is the benefit?
And there is another hiccup. Unlike glass or metal, plastic isn't really made to be reused. The more we use and wash it, the more it absorbs aroma, colorants, and microbes. So even if a fork is labeled reusable, it's mostly not reused and shouldn't be. But that doesn't mean that things haven't changed at all. You've probably seen a lot of the new alternatives out there. Cotton tote bags, wooden cutlery, or paper cups. They look eco-friendly, but are they really? To find out, scientists in Denmark looked at the environmental impacts a carrier bag creates, like carbon footprint, toxicity, and resource use. A paper bag would need to be reused 43 times to be as good as a plastic one, and cotton 7,100 times. So is plastic the right way to go after all?
The main danger of plastic is not taken into account in the assessment. Because the key danger of plastic, this is not about carbon emission, carbon footprint. This is about the emission of micro and nanoplastics that we can find then in our lung, in our brain, in our blood.
So, while paper and cotton have their own cost, plastic has a hidden one. It sticks around for several hundreds of years. So, is there a smarter way of going about this? I researched how other countries do it. In Kenya, it has been illegal to use, manufacture or import plastic bags since 2017. Has that been effective? I asked an expert.
Initially, plastics were all over, not only in the dump sites, along the roads, some blown by wind on trees, everywhere.
Evans Nangulu manages his own company helping businesses and community groups tackle environmental challenges.
But with the ban, the streets are clean, the roads are clean, the cities are clean.
Evans says at the beginning, the ban completely stopped plastic production and massively reduced the amount of plastic in circulation. Those caught manufacturing or using plastic bags face up to 4 years in jail or risk a fine of up to $31,000. And unlike Germany, it's not just an empty threat. But now there's a different problem.
Cross-border movement of plastic bags, the prohibited one, they're still finding their ways to Kenya. In Uganda, industries are still allowed to produce single-use packaging products. They're still finding its way to Rwanda and to Kenya. So these governments need to come together.
Jimena Banegas looks at international environmental law.
We currently have 120 countries that have different forms of plastic bans, and we're all kind of playing whack-a-mole, right? Like banning this product here, but not banning it there, leaving it optional for certain countries to ban, while you still have that product being produced somewhere else.
In August 2025, the UN tried to fix this. Delegates from around the world met in their 5th session to discuss standardizing the rules for everyone. Spoiler alert, they couldn't do it.
Well, the main conflict is that some countries just want to tackle the waste issue and want a treaty that only looks at waste and remain at the national level. And some countries want to be more ambitious and they want to go for binding global bans, restrictions on harmful products, restrictions on certain chemicals that are in plastics, and also have a production cap.
That last one, capping global production, was the biggest sticking point for many countries. Still, it's not unthinkable. In 1987, the world agreed to stop using certain chemicals that were harming the ozone layer. They used to be everywhere, in fire extinguishers, fridges, air conditioners, and hairspray. But countries set binding limits on their production and trade, and to date have managed to phase out 98% of them. Without a cap like that, the plastic industry might find new loopholes and bans.
Bans are essential, but we just can't pretend that bans are the solution. It's not tackling the more than 400 million tons of plastics that are being put into the market.
With a cap, perhaps we wouldn't be replacing thinner forks with thicker ones and calling it a day. But evidently, plastic is still very much in demand, so it's a catch-22 kind of situation. Bans can work if they're enforced, clearly communicated, internationally synced, and designed to avoid loopholes. And if they're backed by long-term political will.
That's all for today. Today's episode started with one very important question. Can we actually fix the problem of pollution or just learn to manage and live with it? And all our stories today pointed to the same answer. There is no single solution, but there are choices. Political, personal, and technological that will decide how much damage we allow and what can we actually fix and undo. Are there any such choices that you're making in your life? Do let us know, we'd love to hear. And do not forget to follow us on our Instagram at DW_environment for more interesting stories like this.
These floating booms stop plastic before it reaches the ocean. Pollution often starts here, in our rivers. Interceptors guide the plastic into their mouth, then they lift it into containers for recycling. They're solar-powered, autonomous and smart, sending alerts when it's full. Once collected, the plastic is recycled. So far, they've stopped 29,000 tons of plastic. That's equivalent to nearly 2,400 buses. From Asia to the Americas, coastal nations with lots of rain and crowded cities near rivers are hotspots for plastic leaking into the ocean. River barriers can help, but they're just one part of the solution. Better waste management, less plastic production, and stronger global regulations are needed to stop the plastic where it starts, on land.
Thank you so much for joining us. I will see you next week with more such stories. Until then, take care. Goodbye. Namaskar.